The first thing to remember that everything in our life ultimately is determined by how it is that we feel. And the interesting thing about that, while it is our deepest place, it also at the same time is a place that is completely under our control, because nothing in the outside world can feel for us. Anything that comes at us from out there is out there, but what we feel inside ourself is completely actually unto ourself. All disharmonious emotion ultimately ends up being the inability on our part to be able to feel ourself. And what ends up happening associated with other people is we accept things from other people that are disharmonious theirself, and then when we take that inside, that ends up becoming a feeling inside of us that in some way we are a less than human being, and that's what actually hurts inside of us. If you want to heal yourself, it ultimately can't ever be something that you blame on another person. It is just, how are you going to solve what you accepted for yourself? And one day you will realize that, why did I accept something hurtful from someone else and then I got hurt because of it? And that's only because everyone is on a spiritual path, whether you're aware of it or not, because we can't live without our spirit. People tend to look at the spiritual realm as being where you go after you die, but they don't really understand that without you here, you won't live. The saddest thing is when our spirit can't feel, it feels like it is dying. And this is just because we are not living a life that on some level we know we're meant to live. And the feeling in everyone, ultimately, whether they are aware of it or not, will default to a feeling that all life evolves. When it's not evolving, we feel stagnant, and this is when people can get to a place where their life can experience the earthly form of emptiness, which means that it is devoid of a good feeling. But remember that you can't find the answer in a place that doesn't have one. In other words, if you want to look back at why a person treated you a particular way, the person that did it doesn't have the answer. Only we do ourselves. And this is why learning how to get to a one point and detach from an attached feeling from another person to our conscious awareness, and sometimes that can just loop through us. And this is many times where people, when they can't deal with it on a mind level, they will default to the intellect or the ego. And so many times our pain becomes part of our personality associated with the ego or the intellect, because that's the only way that we really can actually deal with it. But when we get into the thinking process and try to rationalize or justify why it's there, it still doesn't get rid of the emotion of bad feeling. But part of what still has to continue to happen, and why it's important that you learn who you are in your life experience with you yourself. Because remember that anything that you're going to share with another person ultimately is just you doing it anyways. You don't share collectively with people, you share from who you are with another person. They're a person, you're a person. That's how we communicate back and forth. But your only freedom is your own. You can't do anything about telling them, stop controlling me, when many times they don't even know they're actually doing it. They're unconscious many times to their behavior. And even if they do know it, they'll just say, well, that's who I am, you have to take it. In actuality, no, you don't. But ultimately, the responsibility, the true responsibility, will default to how it is that you treat anybody, whether it's your family or not. So once again, it comes back to us. And because people don't know how to change themselves, they just many times perpetually can live in this ego-intellect relationship with just this physical experience out here, which is really what the Matrix is all about. You're living in some socialized, conditioned reality that there's nothing outside of it, you're completely controlled by the action, reaction, or comparison. And it's a big part of what's going on in the world right now. And it ultimately breaks down to either people wanting to control people, either people wanting to be controlled, or the other people in mind actually wanting to be free. Remember, when it comes to emotion, emotion actually itself has no separation between people. You can feel emotion in another person you've met for the first time. You don't even know them. That seems a little weird, right? A person could talk to you, and I don't know who you are, but you can feel their emotion instantly. It's like, whoa, I know exactly what you're feeling. This is because emotion truly is a non-linear energy. So it's felt and there's no separation to it, which is amazing in a sense that it can be so open, but at the same time, it also can be very painful. And what everyone is looking to do in their path to enlightenment is that how do I detach from this emotion so that it's not constantly being triggered from this world, or even self-triggered inside of myself where I don't feel like I can get away from it. Because it's just as easy for people in this world to feel bad about how people have treated them, but it's also just as easy for people to also feel badly about themselves because they're not dealing with life well. Both of those things are things that everyone is going to have to learn to deal with, because it has more to do with how you're treating yourself, not how you're treating the second point of the world and how it affects you, but how you affect yourself by yourself. And so, because part of what ends up happening when you get into negative emotion is that negative emotion wants to perpetuate negative emotion, and that feels many times like a downward spiral and can be very hard for people. How do I get out of this? Ultimately, when you learn how to get into mind, because all negative emotion will compartmentalize, and that is something that once you get into the mind, you can learn to detach from. And when you do that, then you can find your individual freedom. And then as you spend less time associated with it, it just begins to burn itself down and get smaller and smaller till, one day it's just going to completely dissipate. Then you're going to have an opportunity to really question, without the interference of the pain, is, why would I have picked that pain up? And at that point, in one point in mind, you have the opportunity to actually have self-realization about why, in this case, you would feel so bad about how badly somebody treated you. And sometimes when how badly somebody treats you becomes how badly you end up feeling yourself, they can very easily loop through each other. And those are hard to break, I can tell you. Not impossible, they're harder because they're just not a one-off compartment. Sometimes when two compartments are looping through each other, it can be hard, but when you learn how to relax into the mind, especially when you learn how to do this in the greater Kelee is the non-linear realm that makes it much easier for us to get into mind. And how we treat each other from one person to another ultimately becomes part of this greater understanding one day where everyone will find their freedom. Do Kelee meditation and you will learn how to free yourself from the pain in the world and the pain in yourself.